Now, I don't wear my chaps all the time when I'm in the woods, but I do when I'm cutting. And that seems to be the general theme lately. When I have some time off, I'm in the woods and I'm cutting. And I enjoy cutting. I enjoy cutting bedding areas and creating wildlife cuttings and habitat and diversity. And a lot of that has to do with regeneration. We talk about like deer food. It's interesting because deer food has a lot of overlap with other wildlife species, especially when you need deer food the most. Let's face it, during the summer, I know a lot of people, we have a food plot company. We sell seed for the summertime, but I know a lot of people that put a lot of time and effort into expense and feeding the deer and helping the wildlife during the summertime when that's not a time of need in the whitetail woods and the wildlife woods. It's not. They're using overabundance of food during the summer months, spring, summer, early fall. That's not when deer and critters need food the most. Now you look at food options for going into the wintertime. People plant corn. People plant beans for deer. Brassicas are something that deer can actually, it's a brassica family, it includes rape, turnip, radish, among other things. But deer will dig through the snow, it puts out a lot of volume. There's a bulb like in a purple top turnip or a green globe where deer can dig down through the snow and eat it. So there's good food value during the winter months if they can dig down through the snow. But let's face it, a lot of people don't have the amount of food plot space. They might have enough food plot space where they have some hunting plots during the fall, really setting up that shop or that shot. You might have clover plots that help some turkeys or some grouse in the spring, or some type of spring plots. Rye that comes into the spring. But not everyone has big food plots where they can have this overabundance of food that lasts during the winter months. Well, what's interesting, when you find what's a good food for deer during the winter months, it has a great overlap with wildlife, and it's a perfect complement to a good food plot program, but it's critical in need because it's at a time when the local habitat is at its worst for supplying food. Now, we're in an area where there's obviously some cutting going on. We've done a lot of cutting in this area. I've cut a lot of aspen. We've opened up some huge holes in the canopy so sunlight can come in here. And this is just part of the cuttings at the top of this hollow. We have 2 cuttings behind Dylan, some big cuttings. We have a cutting up here. We have several cuttings all the way up at the top of the hollow over here. And what we're trying to do is increase hardwood regeneration, briar, shrubs, and we're getting those. You can see some maples that have some browsing going on right now, some hickory, some young hickory. It's interesting what deer will eat. Even like a non-preferred species like hickory, they'll eat because it's young and tender. You look over at this cherry right here. See on the tips of this cherry that we cut down? Every one of these tips is chewed. And deer have been feeding on this, and they'll rip it off, and they'll bite those succulent tips, but there's food everywhere in here. So we have lots of briars. Yeah, some of the briars are being eaten right over here. You can see all the tops that have been eaten. They're all chopped off right here where deer just come through and nip. There's tracks everywhere in here. And what's really critical to understand is some of you out there have great food plot programs and some of you don't. But even having a great food plot program, you still have to have the complement of hardwood regeneration and briars and browse during October, November, December, January, February, and March. Critical to have it during those months. In fact, this thick cover down here, a buck doesn't want to be here during the summer. That's why a buck is typically in a completely different location from where he chooses to spend his time during the summer compared to where he chooses time during the fall. He can't crash his antlers growing in velvet through thick stem count and regeneration like this, and so he'll avoid areas like this during the summer. But this is exactly the kind of spot that not only bucks will gravitate to during the fall and winter, but does. And the important part to understand is you're not just doing this for hunting, you're actually doing this because the deer need it. Imagine big open hardwoods with a great food plot program. Great food plot program, but where are they going to bed? They need stem count. Stem count is all this regeneration that's taking place around here. That's what deer need. They need to have that for cover, and they need to have it for food during the winter months and fall months. So if you just have big open food plots, giant hardwoods, that's not a great recipe. You have to have the browse regeneration for their bedding hours. They feed 5 times in 24 hours. That's twice during their bedding hours. And then the afternoon is where they go to those food plots. So you have to have the food plots, you have to have the browse. If you only have browse, like we only have browse out here, That'd be a great spot for the winter months. But what about the fall? What about high quality food sources? What about our ability to build a deer herd? We're not going to have it without those food plots on private land. You need to understand that. We can't build a property just by doing this. There's people out there who say, well, you don't need to build food plots. That is wrong, dead wrong on private land, because the moment my neighbor about 2 miles away builds a big food plot program, or a mile away, we're not going to see any deer no matter how much browse we have. Now, when it comes into the dead of winter, when there's not a lot of food to go around and those food plots are bare, even the best of food plots have their limits. Then maybe we'll find some deer poking their heads around here. But that's not a time where we can actually influence a herd. I want you to be a herd influencer. What I also want you to be, though, is not only an influencer of the browse and the regeneration, the stems per acre and the cover that deer need from October through March, but I want you to be an influence of wildlife in general. We get all this sunlight coming into here, giant hole sunlight over here, sunlight behind Dylan. We have sunlight coming to all these pockets that we've created about an acre in size. What does that equal? Equals that regeneration, it equals cover, that equals grouse. The hardwood regeneration in briars is great turkey nesting habitat, especially as it hits our switchgrass fields and our open fields, pollinator blends that are up there. Equals rabbit cover, equals grouse cover. We don't have a lot of grouse around here. You know why? Because there's not a lot of cover. Pheasants, when we get up into our edges up there, you need standing cover during the wintertime, hardwood regeneration, shrubs, grass cover during the fall, or you're not going to have pheasants. People say, oh, the pheasants, they just come and go. You know, they waves of populations are on a downturn right now. They're on a downturn because a lot of the fence rows and farmland between farmers has disappeared, so there's no cover for pheasant left. It goes right from crop field right to hardwoods. And in the hardwoods, we don't have regeneration, so you don't have grouse. You don't have that hardwood regeneration. So what you find is when you're really searching and seeking great whitetail habitat, and you create hardwood regeneration, which is a critical need for them during the wintertime and fall, then not only do you bless your hunting season with a great hunt, but you bless your property with all kinds of wildlife species. And that's what I want for you, is you're creating this hardwood regeneration right here. You can just look, we have a maze of deer tracks all the way through these tops and cuttings because it's fresh, young, succulent tips that they enjoy. When this regenerates, whether it's out of the stump or some of the hinge cuts we have, or out of the lateral root system, out of this aspen, we get 7,000 shoots per acre. Most of this was aspen down here. A lot of these large logs that are aspen, we'll get a ton of regeneration out of those 7,000 shoots per acre. They self-prune over the years. Eventually you have to cut them down, get some more regeneration, but it's always the gift that keeps giving, that hardwood regeneration. Look to create pockets like this on your property, and not only will your whitetails and your hunt love it, but so will all wildlife species in the area. And it's a great way to give back to the local wildlife populations, whether they be whitetails, grouse, rabbits, turkey nesting, birds, butterflies, bees, and certainly pheasants as it gets up towards the field edges. Enjoy it, the wildlife will too, and it's a great way to give back and enjoy it and have fun on your property this season and going into the hunting season. Hey, I'm really excited to introduce to you our Hills and Thermals web class. It's something we worked on all year. We're trying to put lots of facets of scouting, aerial imagery, diagrams on the whiteboard to really teach you how the wind moves through hills and how you should find bedding areas, how it relates to deer movements in general, how that relates to, this is a bedding area stand, this is a food source afternoon stand. We really tried to put this together and offer you a complete picture of how to navigate hills and find better success consistently where you hunt.